Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Crowd Church. Welcome to the Digital Church Online. It's great to see you. Great that you are here. My name is Matt Edmondson, and beside me this way is the enormously talented Sally Birch. Sally, hey, how you doing? Great to have you back.
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's brilliant to be here again. It's lovely to see you all virtually. Yeah, it's great. I hope everyone's doing really well. Can I still say Happy New Year? I don't know. It feels like it's a bit too late to say that, and it feels like, you know, do we want to say Happy New Year when the events of this week, perhaps we're not all feeling that happy? Or it's a tricky one, isn't it? But basically what I'm trying to say is it's lovely to see you all, and I hope you're doing okay.
Basically what you're trying to say is Happy New Year, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it just feels like, I don't know if we can call it a Happy New Year. I mean, I hope everyone's okay. Obviously, this week we've had another kind of blow with the announcements this week. So I just hope everyone's doing okay off the back of that.
Yeah. Yes, it's not been great news in the UK, and so we appreciate people maybe struggling with that. If you are, do get in touch. Let us know if we can help or pray for you. We would love to do that. Now, Crowd Church, for those of you who don't know, Crowd Church is an online church. We're a church that's just come out of COVID, actually. We started last year because we had to meet online, so we started doing stuff online, and here we are. So we are a digital church, and we say that we're a digital church for those that don't see the point of church. So if you're new here, if you're not sure about the Christian faith, if you're not sure about this whole church thing, well, you're in the right place, let me tell you.
Perhaps the relevance, perhaps you don't see the relevance of church for you, or how, you know, God can impact your life, then that's what Crowd Church is here for. And certainly, as Matt said before, we'd really love to pray for you. You can see, well, it's about to appear. It's going to be the
that's my bad. Hang on a second.
So Matt's going to put the WhatsApp number down here somewhere.
There we go.
There we go. And so please get in touch with that. Get in touch with us via that if we can pray with you or pray for you in any way over anything at all. Maybe it's the COVID situation, but anything at all, then just send us a message via that WhatsApp number.
Yeah, absolutely. Do that, as Sal would say, or, you know, like she said, via the website. You can get in touch with us and let us know what's going on. It's great to see you. Now, if you are here, make sure you say hi in the comments. Be great to see and hear from everybody that's watching the live stream.
It's lovely to see some of the comments already, but I'm a little bit worried about Matt Crew. Hi, Matt Crew. Lovely to have you along with us, but I think he's got some typo problems going. He's saying something about a hunk joining us, but I'm not sure. Yeah. I think maybe he whatever you're watching
maybe
on,
he's missed the C off it. Maybe he meant chunk or chunky.
Oh, well, you said it, Matt. But it is lovely.
That's fine.
And we do love all your comments. So thank you very much for commenting. Do say hi, give us a wave. We'd love to hear from you. Absolutely.
So Nicola's here. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but we call Nicola Lala. So hey, Lala, it's great to see you.
Hey, Lala.
This has now gone live, Nicola, so she's going to hate me because everyone's now going to call her that. So if you do know Nicola Morris, call her Lala. That's all I'm saying.
She'll love that. And we've got Sharon's joined us. We've got Susan joined us, and we've got loads of other people. It's great. James Sloan, who's actually doing the talk for us today, has said hi in the comments as well. So brilliant to have you along with us, James, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here, everyone. Now, without further ado, you mentioned James. Shall we jump into James? That sounds wrong. On so many levels.
Tell people what's coming up today, Matt. That might be a way. Let's tell people what's coming up today. We have got the wonderful James Sloan, and Matt will be telling you a little bit more about James and his background before he does his talks. We've got him having a chat today, and later on, he's going to come back and answer some questions for us as well. What else have we got going on, Matt?
Yeah, so we've also going to have a brief time of worship between James talking and then James coming back on. So we're going to introduce that a little bit in a little bit. I am aware in the intro it said that Josh is going to be doing catch-ups today, which is actually not correct. So Josh, if you're watching the live stream, don't panic. We are changing around a little bit. We're going to get James back on to the live stream after the talk because we want to find out more about Imagine If, which is the charity charity that he heads up. And we're going to introduce that to you today a little bit. And we're going to get into that a little bit more with James. So do stick around because we've got some great stuff.
Brilliant. I'm only a tiny little bit sad about the catch up in that I can't share yet another picture of my kitten.
I was kind of expecting you to have the cat with you, like the cat lady.
Well, I might go and get him for later on, but sorry, I've gone like cat mad. I'm a massive dog lover as well, but we just got a kitten just before Christmas, so I've actually gone cat mad. I am going to be one of those old cat ladies. And Facebook and everything obviously can hear me because I'm getting so many adverts for cat products.
Oh, okay.
Who knew the things that exist out there? So
apparently a lot.
Yeah.
Apparently a lot, which is good.
You'll have to wait for next week to see the latest update in the life of Percy the kitten. Yes,
absolutely. And I mean this with all sincerity. I cannot wait.
Okay. If you work on the tone of your voice there.
Yeah. I need to work on my skills.
I know you're naturally sarcastic, but maybe work on that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, listen, let's get straight into James's talk. Now, if this is your first time with us on the live stream, we have been working through Mark's Gospel. And this is part 2 of a little interruption that Jesus has talking with a chap about what's the 2 best commandments. And we've called this talk, what are the 2 key life goals to focus on? Because it's the start of the year. And we kind of take this time to think about, what should be our New Year's resolutions. I don't know if you've made any, Sal.
Well, one of my things, having just sort of said about the cat things that are appearing on my Facebook page, is not to buy things from Facebook and Instagram because, I did kind of get a little bit crazy with buying just random stuff during the last lockdown. So I've had packages have arrived. I've had to kind of make this pact with myself to not buy any more things from Facebook.
More stuff. Okay.
But I've seen a brilliant cat toy on there, so I'm struggling with that already.
You don't need it. The cat doesn't need it. The cat will be fine.
Okay.
Well, that's an interesting New Year's resolution. I'm not going to lie. First time I've heard that kind of resolution.
I know it's not very deep, is it? Sorry, were you wanting me to say something a bit more deep? I'll work on that.
No, not at all. That's fine. That works. That totally works. But the idea was that actually there should be some more deep spiritual things that we should also think about with our New Year's resolution.
Yeah,
and last week we talked about, in fact, you were one of the people that talked about loving God and how we should start the new year doing that. And this week, James is going to carry on that conversation with loving your neighbour. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. James Sloan.
Well, hello and good afternoon. It's great to be with you here on Crowd Church. My name is James. I'm here filming from my office, so do bear with me if anyone knocks on the door or the phone rings. That's just the nature of where I'm filming today. So just a little bit about me before we kind of dive into today's topic. So my name is James Sloan. I have a wife, Hannah. We've been married for 10 years. We actually celebrated our 10-year anniversary in lockdown in December. We planned to go away for a romantic break, but ended up having a takeaway whilst we both suffered with COVID. We've got 3 small children. Theo's 6, Isabel's 5, and Charlie, our youngest, is 1. So with lockdown having just been announced, we're back into the joys of homeschooling and trying to juggle the 3 of them in and out of the home, hence me filming in the office today. I moved to Liverpool about 15 years ago. I came here for university, studied psychology, and really my desire was to go and be a clinical psychologist, working with adult mental health. But God really took me on a journey, and as me and Hannah were dating at the time, we really felt God lead her into a career path, and the doors opened. And in 2010, I started working for the church, trying to develop our social action that was happening at the time. And in 2012, I set up the charity Imagine If Trust, and I'll come on to that a little bit later on. So I've been running that for the last 8 years. And in that time, we've grown to employing about 20 staff. We run 12 different projects, mostly here in Liverpool, with some work over in the Democratic Republic of Congo as well. So that's my day-to-day job, running that. So today we're going to be looking at the second part of Mark 12, this passage around the greatest commandment. Last week, Matt, John and a few of us touched on what it means to love God. And this week we're going to be looking at what it means to love our neighbour. So I'm going to read the text and then going to look at a little bit of the context and then just unpacking it a little bit and looking at some applications that can really speak to us as we move forward into this crazy year. So let's get into the text. It's Mark 12. I'm going to just read it through. It's good to familiarise ourselves with it before we unpack it. So it's Mark 12, 28 through to 34. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this. Hear, O Lord, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbour as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You are right in saying that God is one and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding and with all your strength. And to love your neighbour as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. So let me ask you something. Have you ever asked a question, maybe when you were younger, asking your parents or a teacher, asking them a fairly clever question and expecting a certain response, and yet the response you get has taken you by surprise? Because I think that's a little bit like what's happening here. We have a teacher of the law, someone who's academic, well-versed in the books of the Old Testament, who would have known all of the laws, and potentially many of the teachers of the law would have ranked these from the greatest to the least. And maybe there was some debate going on around which were the most important, which were the greatest commandments. So this teacher of the law comes to Jesus, maybe looking to settle an old debate between him and some of his pals, maybe trying to catch Jesus out and see what Jesus sees to be the greatest commandments. And yet Jesus' response completely takes him by surprise. You see, these Pharisees, they knew the law, but they didn't always outwork it. They knew what loving your neighbour meant, but that didn't mean that they were out on the streets loving all those around them. If you've seen the film series The Chosen, it portrays this particularly well. Not to cast them in a bad light per se, but to show that they knew everything, but didn't always act on behalf of the people who needed God's love. So here we see Jesus replying, and it's no surprise to them that he says the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart. It's a central theme throughout Judaism, and as John Harding reflected last week, it applies to us in Christianity. It's central to the gospel and to our faith to put God first, to put him centre in our lives, and everything else evolves from that core relationship with God the Father. But the second part of it may have surprised them somewhat. You see, in the Old Testament, loving your neighbour often applied to those who were like you. So it could have meant your people, or the sons of your people, or your brother. Those who you were already attached to, related to, in close proximity with. So many of the Jewish people would have understood that loving God and loving your neighbour meant looking after your own. And Jesus really came to flip that on its head and say, your neighbour is not just those that you are already in contact with. Your neighbour is those who are unlike you. Now, in our context, we've seen many divisions starting to appear. And I'll come on to that a little bit later on, but we're very good at saying us and them. And Jesus tackled that in a parable called the Good Samaritan. You may have become familiar with it. It's taught a lot in Sunday schools, and it still applies to us today. You see, this Jewish man is on the road travelling somewhere. He's attacked by thieves and left for dead by the side of the road. And we see two people walk past him and take no action. And the only person to take action is a Samaritan. Well, Samaritans and Jews did not see eye to eye. They weren't seen to be two people that should be mixing. And the Jews often looked down on the Samaritans as being lesser. Yet this Samaritan man not only rescues the Jew from his situation, but he takes him to a hotel and pays his bill, covers his healthcare costs, and goes the extra mile completely unneighbourly as what would have been seen at the time. And yet Jesus says, which of those three men that walked past the Jewish men had been inside, which of those was acting as his neighbour? And Jesus is attempting to say, we need to break down the barriers of us and them. If you love your neighbour, you're loving everyone that God has created. He created us all equal, and Jesus wanted to kind of put us all on the same playing field. He even goes on further in Matthew 5 to say, don't just love your neighbour, but love your enemies, those who have persecuted you, those who have shown you judgment and condemnation. And ultimately, through his death on the cross, Jesus showed us that we can love our enemies. He was surrounded by thieves, robbers, murderers, and yet Jesus died so that we could all be reconciled to God, ultimately so that the greatest commandment could be fulfilled and that all of us could have an open relationship with God, and therefore through that could fulfill the second commandment to love our neighbours. So what does it mean to have a lifestyle of love? If Jesus talked about it, loving your neighbour is not just a law, but actually a way to live, then what does that mean for us today in the 21st century to be people who have a lifestyle that is orientated around love and grace? I don't know if you saw the Queen's speech last year, but she said this: loving your neighbour is the most simple and yet most complicated task of all, especially in a society as beautiful and diverse as ours is. What a fantastic quote from the Queen. And yet it sums up exactly the problem that we have. Loving your neighbour sounds so simple, whether it be the person that lives next door or someone that you bump into at work or even your family or friends. Just love them. And yet somehow it's become so complex because we're divided by our views on football, on music, on politics, more recently on things like Brexit. Do you want to remain or do you want to leave? That really split the nation. Even around COVID, everyone suddenly has become a public health expert and people disagree massively, especially on social media. And so we've almost enforced this them and us. Well, I'm happy to love people who have the same views as me. I'm happy to love my blue fans or my red fans. I'm happy to love those people who think the same as me. But if they're different, it's much more difficult. And yet Jesus created us all to be one and to love each other. And if we love God, then we must love those who are like us and those who are not like us. John Harding uses the term reflex quite often. If we love God, our reflex is to love those around us. They're the ones that he created. We have to love what God created. So how do we kind of apply this in our day to day? We have multiple opportunities every day to embody the love of Jesus. For me as a believer, I see it as part of my mission to be loving, to be Jesus to those around me. It's why we set up Imagine If, so that we as a church could provide a loving response that says, if Jesus was here today, he would be feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, supporting street sex workers. All of these things are part of who Jesus is and who we are to be in light of that. However, it requires thought, it requires cost, it requires sacrifice. And to me, that's been one of the biggest things that I've learnt over the last 10 years, is that actually to have a lifestyle of love is a huge sacrifice. For me, it meant putting aside a career that would have been well respected, well paid, a huge chance of promotion, to explore something that I felt called into. For my wife, it's meant leaving her career in hospital medicine to support people who have had traumatic birth experiences or have experienced sexual assault. And yet somehow she finds a complete joy in doing that because she's where God wants her to be. But it has been a sacrifice, it's been a cost. I often think about excuse the term, but like a love balance. Imagine if like you get your gas, energy statements and they say if you're in debit or credit, how full is your love balance, your love account? Because I would imagine that Jesus was just giving out all the time, always in debit, giving out at every opportunity and then being filled up by the Father, being filled up in these kind of quiet times on the mountainside with God. And I often think, if I was to kind of put a number on my love balance, would I be continually emptying it out with God filling me up afresh every day? It's why often many of us look to have morning quiet times, devotional times, and frontline posts a lot of those every morning that we can tune into. So how full is your love balance? Because I think once you are being filled up by God and giving that out, that really does make a difference in the world and in the lives of those around you. I was looking for some stories to kind of pad this out and to give some examples, and I saw a couple of different stories that really kind of spoke to me. One of which was the story of the Salvation Army. I don't know if you're familiar with their kind of history, but there's this incredible story of a shipwreck, and there were some workers from the Salvation Army on the boat, and there weren't enough life rafts to go round. So many of the Salvation Army guys who were wearing life jackets in the cold water would swim around and find others who weren't wearing life jackets and saying, do you know God? Do you know where you're going if you don't survive here? And those who said no, the Salvation Army guys would take off their life jackets and give them to the others and say, go and live a life that is loving of God and loving of those around you. Essentially, repent and find Jesus, find Christian faith, because they sacrificed essentially their lives for others, the most loving thing that you could do. Another example was an author called Tony Campolo, who was in a bar one night and he heard a lady who was a street sex worker saying it's her birthday and she had no way to celebrate it. Now he's a pastor, he's an author, he's a well-known Christian kind of figure, and he took these two ladies and basically threw a huge birthday party for them, essentially keeping them off the streets and showing them his love. Here in Imagine If, we've seen loads of stories of transformed lives. It's one of the things that we measure. We are not so keen on how many people we've seen, but how many people's lives have we transformed. And one of those is a lady called Leanne. The video's on our website. She was a street sex worker. We met her through our outreach a couple of years ago. We moved her into our accommodation. We moved her partner at the time into our men's house, and it wasn't easy, but we looked after them and supported them. And eventually she kind of found a stable life. We helped her engage in volunteering and some training, and really just worked through all the stuff that had come up from her past. And eventually we moved her and her partner out into shared accommodation. Last year we got a call from them to say that they'd had a baby, and she was now 2. And last year, before lockdown we had the privilege of moving that 2-year-old into our nursery, supporting the family as they moved together from the place of chaos to a place of stability. And it's an absolute privilege for us to do that, but it did require some sacrifice. It did require us to have difficult conversations and to put up with some challenging conversations and scenarios. But if we simply said yes to all of our service users, it wouldn't be the loving thing to do. We have to be able to confront behaviour, we have to be able to bring challenge and bring support, and that is what we found across many of our projects. Is actually the most loving thing to do is actually to be firm and to be fair, but to let them know that we love them, but we don't accept some of the behaviours or even the tone that they're speaking to us, and really to, in many ways, reparent people, we might call it discipleship, into a different way of living and understanding who they are and who they are in God. So love isn't always the easiest choice. It's often a challenging conversation, a confrontation, or even a refusal. For me, loving my kids doesn't always mean giving them what they want. Often it means doing those things, those different conversations, because they need boundaries, they need discipline, and they need sometimes some consequences. So as we look to love our neighbours, we have to look at what the sacrifices might be. We might need to count the cost, and we need to appreciate that sometimes that could mean a difficult conversation. So just to land, let's look at some applications and see what we can do and how we can love those around us. So what can we do to apply this scripture, this principle of loving our neighbours as we move into 2021? How can we put it into practice in our lives? I've got 3 very practical things that we can look at. But I put, as Matt suggested last week, I put this on Twitter to see what kind of response I got. And I asked the question, have you found it easier or harder to love your neighbour during 2020? And the responses were very mixed, but very interesting. People said it's been both. It's been really easy to love those who needed support. Maybe they were a shielding neighbour or someone that needed some extra support. And we saw that ourselves. We had 60 plus volunteers who mobilised to support those who were shielding, people who were willing and keen to show their love for others and those around them. And as a city, we saw that on a huge scale. It's fantastic. But people have said it's been really hard especially on social media, to see friends and family posting their thoughts or opinions on the COVID response and how we should be dealing with it. And people found that quite hard to love them in light of what they were saying online. So it's both easy and hard to be loving. And I think we're going to see more of that. We want to be loving, and yet we find it hard to do that in light of what we often read or see or hear. So let's look at 3 things that can help us as we move into this year to be open and to be loving to those around us. The first thing that we need to do is really look out for those around us. I know it sounds simple, but actually just to observe and to notice those who are struggling. Again, whether that be a neighbour or a work colleague or a family or a friend, is to look out for them, recognise what's going on, what's changed, has their behaviour changed, has their language changed, are they less in contact now than they were? Maybe they're really struggling and they just can't reach out to those around you. So being very active and engaging, knocking on a door, sending a text, sending an email to just ask, how are you doing? I think we've all recognised how difficult it can be and the effect that can have on our mental health. So the first thing is to look out for those around you, be observant and pick up on the little signs. The second thing for those of us who believe in prayer is to pray for them. Even if that's through gritted teeth for those that you don't necessarily enjoy spending time with or want to support. There's something amazing in the power of prayer that if we do it, God not only changes our heart, but God works through a situation and often things that were difficult suddenly become a lot easier to manage. So as we seek time in prayer and we call it interceding on their behalf, praying that their situation would resolve, would get better, and that we could be part of that. So praying for those around us, praying for opportunities to speak into their lives and to provide support in any way we can. And the third way, which is really probably the most challenging, is to learn and to be teachable. I think we've all got blind spots, we've all got things that we need to be aware of, and that's why as a church we believe in missional communities, having a group of people that we can walk together with. The Christian faith is not meant to be walked in isolation, we're meant to journey with those around us. It's how Jesus set up his group of disciples who were essentially learners. The word disciple means to be a learner, and that's true of us today, is that we're journeying with Jesus as a group together, and that's allowing people to speak into our lives, allowing people to be accountable to us and us to them, so that we can grow to be more Christ-like, and therefore we can be more like Jesus to those around us as we reflect on his word and we live it out and we breathe it out, that we can be the body of Christ, we can be the church. In these weeks and months where we cannot be gathering in person, the church is scattered, just how it was in Acts. So as we learn and we are teachable, maybe we can be that amazing, vibrant, scattered church that we see in the book of Acts in the New Testament. So look out for others, pray for them, and be teachable, be moldable. As we close, I want to just quickly recommend 3 books that you might want to explore as we look onto this topic. The first is Love Does by Bob Goff. Fantastic, exciting, creative stories of using the love of God to change situations and to impact people's lives. He talks about throwing street parties for a neighbour suffering from terminal cancer. He talks about taking balloons to people's houses just to tell them he loves them. He talks about going to Uganda and meeting the High Commissioner and giving them a key to his house as an offer of friendship. And really it just challenges the nature of what we would see as being acceptable, and he just blows it out of the water and talks about stories of extravagant and reckless love, which is the love of God that we know. The second is a book called When Helping Hurts by Steve Colbert, probably much more of a textbook, much more based around mission and how to do mission well. It's really benefited me in terms of the journey of Imagine If and looking to support service users, and not to be paternalistic or to be patronising, trying to fix them, but actually looking at what's right, what's working well, what is God already doing, and partnering with that. And it's really aimed at developing world mission and how we can support those communities without being the white saviour who turns up to fix everything for people. And it's really, really spoken to me. Really highly recommend it. And the third book is a bit closer to home, written by my parents, John and Myra Sloan, called 5 Loaves and 2 Fishes. It's stories and stories from their 20 years of working overseas, providing medical missions in Uganda, Guyana, the Philippines, the Congo. I've had the privilege of being on some of those mission trips and seeing some of those stories. It's healings, miracles, God's provision, for them. And it really is just a kind of biography of all these stories of what God has done in their lives, as they have put themselves out and walked in faith and trusted him. So I would highly recommend it. I think you can get it on Amazon. So as we finish, let's pray that as we navigate these challenging, uncertain times, that as we put God first in our lives, as we look to him to provide for all that we need, even in lockdown, that he would use us both individually and as the wider body of church to respond to and to provide practical, emotional, spiritual support to those around us who might be struggling, and in that we can truly love our neighbour.
Wow, there you go.
Wow, what a brilliant talk, James. Thank you. And so challenging. Did you find that challenging, Matt?
Yeah, I did. And you know what? I always love to get challenged. But the other thing that I loved about this talk was it was deeply practical. Did you notice that? He everything was deeply practical. It wasn't like so spiritual it was no earthly good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, really practical. I love that. Such a challenge as well. Just thinking about loving your enemies. You know, it is easy, isn't it, to show those around us that we love, to show love to them, but those people that we find difficult at work or difficult relationships, that really does have a cost that goes with it. So really challenging. Thank you, James.
Yeah, it's very hard to love people you don't like, I think, and it is very spot on. And I'm going to enjoy talking to James in a little bit. It's going to be good. We're going to get him on and we're going to have a conversation with him about all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. And if you've got any questions, if anybody's got any questions they want to put in the comments for James, or WhatsApp us on the number, which is the number around, Matt?
Yeah, hang on. There it is.
There's the number. WhatsApp, ask the question. If you don't want to put it on the comments, pop it on there, and then we can ask James some of your questions later on. Not relating to the quiff, as came up before, but maybe relating to Imagine If. But yeah, brilliant, really brilliant, and can't wait to have a bit more of a chat with James in a minute. So we're going to go into a little time of worship now. We've got the brilliant Greg and Martha Schofield, and they've actually written a song. It's called Only in You, Jesus. So you can sing along if you know it, or if you want to just let the words kind of wash over you or meditate on them, you might find that really helpful. Matt and I were talking about some of the lines in it before, and he was saying about the line of, God is a God of goodness. And it's that goodness, isn't it? It's his goodness in us that overflows and helps us with that love, that when we perhaps need a bit more love for those people that we're finding a bit difficult to love, it's that goodness that helps us with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. Without further ado, let's get this on screen. I just need to press this button. Here we go.
God of goodness, anything less than all of you, anything less than your life-giving truth, can never satisfy my heart, can never satisfy my heart. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you, Jesus. God of goodness, anything less than all of you, anything less than your life-giving truth, can never satisfy my heart, can never satisfy my heart. Only in you do I have it all. how great you are, how great and beyond measure. How great you are, how great you are, how great and beyond measure. How great you are, how great you are, how great and beyond measure. How great you are, how great you are, how great and beyond measure. For you are great and beyond measure. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you, Jesus.
Okay, what a fantastic song by Greg and Martha. And as Matt pointed out in the comments, it worked this week because it didn't work that well last week. But it did work well this week. And I think it is such a beautiful song by Greg and Martha there. And you can get that actually on YouTube. You can buy the song if you like. Not that I'm giving it a plug, but it is a song you should definitely have on your worship playlist. Whether you're a Christian or not, it's just a beautiful song. So plug there. What did you think to it, Sal? Was that the first time you've heard that?
I loved it. That was the first time I've heard that in full. Yeah, and I've really, really loved it. And I think it's just got such a beautiful message to it as well, haven't it? And you know, whether you know, if you don't know Jesus, then, and it says about only in you do I have it all. Maybe that's the thing that's missing. Not to say that life is easy or we don't all have the same issues and problems, but you know, we've got that goodness of God and Jesus going through it with us, which is amazing.
Very well said. Very well said.
Thank you so much, Greg and Martha. One talented bunch.
Very talented husband and wife going on there. Very, very good. And speaking of talented wives, my wife messaged me during the live stream and just said that actually, you know, one of the things that she was really intrigued with when James was talking about loving your enemies is how that works if you're not a Christian. Right? How does that make sense if you're not a Christian? And so this is a really interesting question. So I'm going to ask this to James, and we're going to try using the power of technology. You understand this is the first time we've done this, and it's all worked so well so far. Let's see if we can bring James into the live stream. Here we go, James. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
And we can hear you too, which is a beautiful thing.
Fantastic. And you can see the quiff live on Facebook.
Live quiff. It's not quite as magnificent as it was during the talk, but it's pretty good.
I think that might have been down to camera angles. I'm not sure. I'm just saying. So yeah, James, listen, what I want to talk about with you, and the reason I really appreciate you coming on, really appreciate you doing the talk, is we obviously want to talk about Imagine If. And we want to talk about that charity and trust. But before we get into that, I'm intrigued what you think about this idea that, you know, this question that Sharon asked. How does loving your enemies work if you don't actually have a Christian faith?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, as I talked about, I feel that loving both your neighbours and your enemy flows out of your relationship with God. If you love God, there is no them and us. There are no barriers. He calls us to love everyone equally. If you don't have a Christian faith, then you might look at love through a different lens. But I think equally, we're still called to be good citizens. We want to be morally, ethically, doing all we can to look after each other. And especially in a pandemic, I think we're better when we're connected, when we're together, when we work as one. So loving your enemies might just be not responding to something that riles you on Facebook or social media.
Can I say that happened to me this week? Yeah.
A daily challenge. Yes, absolutely. Good answer. I like that.
Very good answer. I think the other thing that I love about this is when you think about it from the other side of it, right? And why do we love our enemies? Well, because God first loved us. And actually, and you mentioned this about when Jesus was on the cross, wasn't he? He was surrounded by his enemies. And that's actually our moral guide, isn't it? That's who we can look to and go, well, you know what? He did it. God did it. God's a God who is good and loved his enemies. And it's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about the parable of the Good Samaritan. For any Jew that had been questioning what Jesus was saying, he blows out of the water by saying, this Samaritan guy in this story is able to turn this situation around and rescue a Jewish man. Surely we can break down those barriers in society today with the same level of understanding and context that we can apply from the Bible.
Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Yeah, and we definitely want to do a bit more of a feature of Imagine If, and we want people to sort of know a little bit more about what it is that you do. Could you give us like a brief overview of Imagine If Trust and just the different charities that are part of that, please, James?
Yeah, so I mean, Imagine If is a little bit different than many charities, and we don't just do one thing. We're essentially a charity that encompasses multiple projects, all running under the same banner. And really we do that because it came out of the church, and the church in a inner city Liverpool was there to respond to the needs around us. We couldn't turn a blind eye to what's happening on our doorstep. And really people have been passionate about that. They've really felt God put it in their heart. And as a charity, we want to equip those people, release them, take care of all the back office admin so that they can be released to do that face-to-face personal contact. And over time that's grown. So in the last 8 years, we've grown from being fairly small to we're fairly substantial charity now, with, as I said, about 20 staff, 12 projects. And that ranges from feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, supporting street sex workers, providing volunteer befrienders for families who are in crisis or at risk of falling into care, befriending elderly people, all these things that just stemmed out of recognizing a need and saying we as a church surely can mobilize our people and make a real difference in Liverpool.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And in terms of, you've been doing this a little while now, right? The whole Imagine If thing. And again, just to emphasize, Imagine If has come out of the church, hasn't it? And people from the church having a heart for people in the city of Liverpool going, we can do something here. We should be, a bit more practical and living. What are some of the stories? I mean, you told us a little bit about Leanne in the talk, but what's your favorite story?
There's a couple for me. One is from our work in the Congo. That's the only thing that we do that is not in Liverpool. So we've had a relationship with a pastor in the Congo for about 10 years, and we send teams out there on a regular basis. And about 2 years ago, I took Chris Kent, and you go to these really hopeless situations, and the pastor says to us, would you pray for this family? And they've lost everything. Husbands have been killed, sons have been attacked, women have been raped, and you're left speechless. And Chris kind of mustered a prayer together as best he could and prayed a blessing over the home. And as we left and walked away, we both had tears in our eyes. And Chris just turned away and went back to the house and just hugged the mother of the family. And it's just one of those moments that sticks with you forever. You think, two completely different lives, and yet somehow through the grace of God they're connected. She has lost more than I will ever lose in my life, and more than Chris has lost, but they were able to connect somehow. And just it's beautiful. I wanted to take a picture of it, but I wouldn't dare myself to get the camera out. I just sat and enjoyed it. So those moments of just connection between us and them was fantastic. But more recently, probably Hannah's story is a great one. We've shared it a few times, but she was referred to us about 3 years ago. She was homeless, was in a hostel. They referred her to our Genesis Housing project, and a couple of us, Gemma's on the feed, did a lot of work with Hannah, and really kind of got her to a place of understanding what had happened, reconciling the relationship with her mum, which had kind of fallen apart, and she moved back home after about 1.5 years to live with her mum. took on some volunteering at Sticky Fingers, and eventually came on staff about a year and a half ago. And about 2 weeks ago, I signed the document for her to get her own flat.
Wow.
Where she's living on her own. And so, in that short time, she's moved from complete chaos to complete stability. And not only that, she's a beautiful person to have around. And
yeah, she's lovely. I love Hannah. She's great. She is great.
Yeah, I love that. And I really loved what you said as well about, it's not about the numbers. You're not interested in the numbers. You're interested in the impact that you're having. I think that's really important. And you're getting the numbers as well by the impact that that's having, and passing on to everybody else. But yeah, that's a fabulous story. I just wanted to ask you, James, how COVID has impacted Imagine If.
Yeah, it's been tough, if I'm honest. I think I cried when we closed Frontline in March. It just hit me really hard. Just knowing that people would be struggling, and we had to shut our doors, but we quickly got a plan and reopened everything we could as best we could. So we were delivering food parcels. We mobilised about 60 volunteers to provide shopping for those who are isolated or shielding. We started calling all our elderly people to make sure they're okay and dropping food to them. The nursery went online and we did circle time and singing time with parents over Zoom. Supported our tenants remotely as best we could. And obviously that's stabilised a little bit now, but we're back in lockdown and back to a kind of skeleton, bare bones operation. But financially, we've been incredibly grateful to have support from individuals, from companies, from funding. And we're actually about to buy our own property to move people into as a response, just because we're recognising the amount of homelessness and what that's doing to people. So moving to new areas and trying to react, adapt, innovate in this crazy season.
It is crazy. And that's what Genesis Housing is all about, isn't it? It's about the church looks after houses, brings people who are homeless into them and helps, what's the right word, rehabilitate them to society?
Yeah, I mean, you can't say what a typical Genesis Housing tenant looks like. Some require much more support than others. But really, we're there to do all we can, whether that's some volunteering opportunities or training or trying to do job searches for them, just to kind of provide a bit more of a family to help support them into whatever they want. But largely, the aim is to get them into their own preferred tenancy, whether that be back with a family or into independent living. We just walk that journey with them, and that's quite intensive. We've got 7 tenants at a time, and that can feel overwhelming to work with 7 people at once. But it's a joy.
Yeah.
And so how can people get involved? People are hearing about Imagine If for the first time and they want to get involved. What can they do, James?
So broadly, there are 3 things really. One is to pray. Now that sounds for some people quite passive, but actually we think that makes a real difference. We started prayer walking on a Wednesday morning, just trying to pray into the local area and asking God to give us words for the people that live there. So especially now in lockdown, that's one thing you can really do, is just to pray into what we're doing, praying for those that we're serving, that we can make a real difference in their lives. When lockdown ends, we do need volunteers for all the things we're doing. So there are opportunities to serve, and some of those are on our website. If you want to check that out, which is www.imagineiftrust.org. And the third thing is you can give. You can either sign up to be a regular donor, or you can give through the website. Loads of opportunities to do that as well. So we've got companies that give, we've got individuals who give, and as I said, we've got some incredible kind of grant funding as well that supports what we do. So they're the 3 main strands to get behind the work that we're doing.
Fantastic. And it makes sense that people should be in Liverpool to help because it's a local charity. But do people need to be a Christian or a person of faith to get involved?
Not at all. No, we're a Christian charity. We're very clear about that. We are underpinned by Christian values, and we are based in a church building. Doesn't look like a church building, but it is a church building. But we've got volunteers of all faiths and no faith. But as long as they respect what we believe and how we work that, then there's no requirement to be a Christian to get involved.
Fantastic. Well, James, listen, thanks for coming back on. You guys do such a fantastic job, and it's it's such a privilege to be involved in a church that has this social outreach going on. And
absolutely. Shout out to James and Gemma and everybody else that works at Imagine If, and just thank you for everything you do. It is amazing.
Yeah,
it's a great team.
You guys are legends. Thank you so much. And listen, James, we're going to have you back on soon. We're going to also hopefully meet the beautiful Gemma, if we can convince her to come on camera, and give us regular updates. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, that's going to be your job. I just want, yeah. So we just want to.
Miracles, Matt. I can't work miracles, but I'll see what I can do.
No, Sal, you can work miracles. Come on, that's what I've been led to believe. But listen, James, it's been brilliant. We're looking forward to hearing the stories and having a regular catch up with Imagine If. We're going to be featuring Imagine If a lot more on the Crowd stream. So it feels like it's been too short. We've got loads more questions, but we are definitely going to get more from you. I have no doubt. But James, thanks again. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for doing the live stream. Appreciate it.
Guys, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, wasn't James fantastic there, Sal?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I love that. Really, really practical, really good. And what a fabulous charity that you can get behind, whatever your beliefs are. You can see that charity is doing good across Liverpool and in the Congo as well. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolute legends. Well, I think it's probably time to wrap it up now, and just to say a big thank you to everybody that's joined us and watched us. Big thanks again to James for taking the time to do that fab talk, and for also coming on and telling us about Imagine If. That was amazing. Yeah, really, really good. Don't forget that if you'd like any prayer, or if you want to get in contact with us at all, we've got the WhatsApp number, or you can go to our website and get in contact with us there. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to support you if you need any prayer or anything else. So please get in touch. Yeah, absolutely. We would definitely love to pray for you, definitely love to connect with you. Make sure you go to the website, fill out the form, and we'll email you whenever we are live. But we'll be back again here next Sunday at 4 p.m, where we are going to look at the bigger picture. Oh yes, is it time to look at the bigger picture? That's what we're getting into next week. So make sure you do come back and join us. We are going to close out today's service by replaying the worship song Only in You Jesus by Greg and Martha. Feel free to sing along, feel free to worship. That's all from Sally and I. Sally, is there anything left for you to say? Just thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to some more pictures of Percy the kitten next week. Absolutely. We genuinely can't wait. So Sal, thanks for being with me this week. It's been fun as always. It's been good. Yeah, you're great. A legend. Bye, everyone. Have a great week. All right, bless you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye for now. Bye. God of goodness, anything less than all of you, anything less than your life-giving truth, can never satisfy my heart, can never satisfy my heart. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you, Jesus. God of goodness, anything less than all of you, anything less than your life-giving truth, can never satisfy my heart, can never satisfy my heart. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus. Only in you do I have it all. Only in you, Jesus.
how great you are, how great you are, how great and beyond measure. How great you are, how great you are, how great